Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Entheogenic Esquire YouTube channel. My name is Greg Lake. I'm a civil rights trial and appellate attorney and an expert in nonprofit law. Today we're going to drop in real quick and respond to a call to action video which was posted about a week ago by TriggerSmart, raising some potential issues with a 2022 transaction between a private entity, technology company for which Tyler Boyer sat on the board, and TPUSA. Now, as we'll see, apparently the private company who developed the technology, so allegedly, right, we don't know that for sure, but apparently the company that developed this technology for TPUSA somehow ended up with the ownership rights in the app, and so people have questions to the effect that, hey, is TPUSA actually secretly owned or run by this private company? And so we're going to take a look at this with an eye towards nonprofit laws, and particularly with regard to interested people and transactions, and see what we can glean from the information that we have right now. Let's hop right in. Okay, so now let's hop right in. We're going to play TriggerSmart's video. Good video, TriggerSmart, by the way, and link in the description. And then we're going to look at some of these state filing documents that I pulled up for this private company in TPUSA. So let's look.
It shows a little bit different. This is kind of a call to action. I got some information that was sent to me in a tip, and for obvious reasons, they want to remain anonymous, but it's interesting. So if you guys can dig deeper into this and verify some of it and maybe get back to me, especially Wills in Finance. If you see this information, you might have already seen this, you might have already looked into this, but can you take the information you know and your expertise and dig a little bit further into this and let me know if there's something here? And also let me know if any of that missing money went to this company. And this is the content from the email copied over, so obviously I can hide their information. I spent the last 48 hours combing through official corporate filings and public records, and I found something interesting that I wanted to pass along to you and your team. Most people think donors and activists own the movement they support, but official records show a private, for-profit company actually owns the technology behind Turning Point USA. It's called Superfeed Technologies, and it's a business, not a charity. Who runs the private company? According to the 22 annual report, the board includes TPUSA's own COO, Tyler Boyer, and Erica's mother, Lori Francevy. This is one of the pieces I need to be confirmed as well by you guys. They essentially sit on both sides of the contract between TPUSA and Superfeed. This is important because when you sign up for the TPUSA app, you aren't giving your data to a charity, you're giving it to Superfeed. The fine print in the App Store shows that its private company owns the code and the user rights for the TPUSA app. And then they show here, obviously this is the TPUSA.
Okay, so that is TriggerSmart's video, call to action. TriggerSmart, we're going to try to get some of the answers at least for you here. But before we jump into that, let me run through some of these filings here that I found. And so I got both TPUSA's and I got the company, Superfeed's state filings. So these are annual reports for these two entities in Arizona. Just so you know, it says 2022 annual report here. This is for Turning Point, but this essentially, this report, which is submitted at the end of the fiscal year, first of the next year, actually tells us what was going on in 2021. And so these reports just update the Secretary of State, like, you know, is your address the same? Who are the directors and officers? And this is what we're interested in, obviously. So we see that during fiscal year 2021, Tyler Boyer was an officer, at least a listed officer on state paperwork in 2021. Now, if we go to Superfeed Technologies, again, this is a 2022 annual report, but it tells us what was Superfeed going on with Superfeed in 2021. And here we see Tyler Boyer is a director, and not just that, he's the chairman of the board of directors, right? So that's very interesting. And so to the extent this contract with Superfeed occurred in 2021, we can for sure say Tyler Boyer was on both sides of that transaction. Now, that's not the do-all, end-all to whether it was inappropriate or against the nonprofit rules, stuff like that. And that specific analysis is outside the scope of this video, and plus we would need more information. But let me keep going here. We'll get some information. So then we're going to look real quick. So again, this is 2023 annual report for TPUSA, but this tells us again what's going on in TPUSA 2022. And if we see here, they do not have Tyler Boyer listed as an officer here. So again, if anybody's been on the Wayback Machine or has other documents that might prove otherwise, please let me know, because that would be very interesting. And just my quick take on this, y'all, is that he was removed from these filings in TPUSA as an officer or director for the purpose of getting this contract done with the least amount of sketchiness, outward appearances as possible. So again, but if we go to the 2022, it's 2023 report, but 2022, he was again, now he's not in 2022 the chairman of the board of directors, but he is still a director on the board of this Superfeed Technologies Inc. So now that we've looked at all this, let me switch back and let's go ahead and get into the analysis here. Okay, so now to the analysis. First thing, the question, from Trigger Smart was basically, does this private company own/control TPUSA secretly? Now, secretly, we could say perhaps, but I just want everyone to understand that a nonprofit entity is nonprofit as opposed to for-profit, because no one or no person or entity can have a beneficial equity ownership interest in a nonprofit, right? So again, could they secretly own? Perhaps, but it would be very unlikely, and to the extent someone found out, it would really extinguish their nonprofit status. So perhaps, but let's just assume, because generally people can't, or entities can't have a beneficial ownership interest, we're going to act like they don't actually have an ownership interest. Now, whether they control it through back channels, things of this nature, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but probably so. But anyways, just so we get that out of the way. Now, when we look at the 2021 filings, we see that Tyler Boyer was an officer, listed as an officer at TPUSA, and as on the board of directors of Superfeed. And so if the contract was done that year, then he would be playing both sides of that transaction. We would really want to look at the contract, and we would want to look at the board minutes for each entity to really get the sense of whether that was a violation of the nonprofit code, whether something slick went on there. Now, if it happened in 2022, again, we see Tyler not listed as an officer or director in TPUSA. I don't know if that's actually true. They could have simply just left him off. They don't have a duty to report every single officer on that form, so perhaps he could. And to be honest with you, I think that they probably purposely dropped him off the TPUSA filing in 2022. Well, it would have been the 23 report, because they did this transaction and wanted to obfuscate any appearance of impropriety as much as possible. And that's probably why we see Tyler Boyer. And again, this is just speculation. That's probably why I believe, my opinion, we see Tyler Boyer dropped off the 2022, because this was apparently a big contract. So now let's kind of roll into the main question about the ownership of this technology. And so, sure, TPUSA as a nonprofit corporate entity can certainly engage with a technology company to develop an app for it. But at the end of that, who owns the rights to the technology? Now, under normal circumstances, if TPUSA purchased and paid Superfeed to develop this technology for them, then TPUSA should own it. And I think that's where we're getting at here, is that if TPUSA paid to have this technology developed, right, it should own the rights to that technology. And so we don't have the contract here, so we can't see, but I mean, we can presume that the contract kept the intellectual property rights in Superfeed. So just from an outsider's perspective, I'm not an expert in those types of contracts. It seems to me that this might be violative of 501c3, because it seems that this is a very one-sided contract and perhaps unfavorable for TPUSA, since they did not end up owning the rights to their own app technology. That's my perspective on this. It really, from a bird's eye view, it stinks pretty bad. Sure, we would need some more specific documents and information like board minutes and contracts to do a full assessment of it. However, I can just say, from a bird's eye view, from a nonprofit expert's perspective, this looks very shady. This looks very shady, and it looks like they were moving Tyler Boyer around in position within TPUSA to get this contract done up with it and try to abscond or to obfuscate as much as possible any appearance of impropriety. So that's my take on this. I hope this helped Trigger Smart. For anyone out there, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm new to this journey, and I've had a lot of help from Mr. Danks. Thank you much, Mr. Danks. And I love each and every one of you. Thank you. I'll keep pumping out content like this. And yeah, I hope we can eventually one day get to the bottom and understand what the actual complete picture with TPUSA was during these years that we've been examining. So have a great weekend. Peace.